And then I'm going to share my screen, and this is only like my second time doing this on Zoom, so I'm really hoping that this works out. Okay, are you guys all seeing my screen? Can somebody unmute themselves and say yes for me? Anybody? Do I still have you there? Can somebody say yes for me?
Yes, we can see. I can see your screen. Absolutely.
Okay. I was a little concerned for a second. Let's see, view, let's present. Okay. So, as I was saying to Carl, this is really just going to be a really kind of, I don't want to say informal, but a very, very basic introduction to some of the psychology of being a fitness and nutrition coach. And I am so passionate about this because I've spent almost coming up on 11 years actually in the fitness and nutrition industry. And I really only acquired using psychology skills in the last couple of years. And it's made such a huge difference in my success rate with my clients and really helping them with their ability to make changes. So again, this is very basic. This is oriented towards people in the health and fitness field. It's not meant for doing any sort of clinical work on somebody's psychology. So not treating anxiety, not treating depression. This is purely just to make it so people can live a healthier lifestyle. So the first thing I want to ask anybody who is in the fitness and nutrition industry as a coach, and Amanda, I know that this is maybe going to be a different context for you, but you can think about things in terms of the church group that you guys lead too. The question is, are you putting as much time into your coaching ability as you are into finding clients? And I know that in organizations like Beachbody, or for anybody who runs their own business, sometimes we can kind of find ourselves accidentally getting into this rut where we're focused more on building our business and we're not necessarily building ourselves as coaches, and because of that, we can't deliver on the value that we're trying to provide to people. So coaching should be constantly growing and evolving for you. You should be spending just as much time trying to improve your coaching and your groups as you are in trying to build your business. So the main point that I always want to lead with is that we are here to serve others. You have to keep that at the heart of what you do. We are here to serve. And I want you to keep that in mind as I'm going through talking about this process and some of the psychology that goes into this. So I always like to start with this point because I think that coaches can really differ on whether they believe this statement or not. Eating healthy is not easy. Exercising daily is not easy. Our food culture and our national culture promotes unhealthiness. And, you know, I have some coaches on my team who I think don't necessarily believe this. They think that people who are not eating healthy are just lazy. People who don't go to the gym maybe are just lazy, and that they just need to make the choice. And if they make the choice, then everything will line up if they would just stop being quite so lazy. And the way that I look at it as a coach, I really don't believe that. When I look at the number of hours that people work per week, the expectations that employers have, the lack of nutrition education that we have in public schools, the volume of advertising that we have that surrounds junk food and all the imagery on TV that kids see promoting, you know, Cocoa Puffs and potato chips and not fruits and vegetables, everything really stacks up to create what we call an obesogenic culture. So our culture is obesogenic. And I try to tell my clients, because I think it really makes a big difference, and whether they get down on themselves or not when they're starting a lifestyle change, I really try to tell them, like, people who are in shape in this society are really the best of the best. They're the exception to the rule. They're these people who somehow magically are overcoming everything that is stacked against us. And so I don't want people who are coming to me looking for a lifestyle change to feel badly about the fact that they're in a position where they need a change. So I just want to emphasize this point to you, and that giving someone an eating plan and an exercise plan is not enough to change their lives. It is not. If that was enough, everybody would already be in shape, because all it would take is going to Google, going to YouTube, looking for the information, because all the information is out there for free. There's meal plans, there's exercise plans, yet we have a 60% rate of overweight people in the US, a 30% rate of obesity, and it's not really getting markedly better. So Having an eating plan and an exercise plan in someone's hands is not the problem. It's implementing it and following through on it that is usually the problem. And in my coaching circle and with working with Beachbody, obviously we try to really tackle this by focusing on the triad of fitness, nutrition, and accountability. And that accountability has to do with surrounding yourselves with a community of like-minded people who are going to lift you up and hold you accountable to your goals. Now, the thing is, that sounds great when you say it, but it is actually really hard to create that accountability and to create that sense of community. And I know, Yvette and Carl, maybe you've had this experience where somebody has spent $200 with you on a challenge pack and somehow they don't show up for your group. They don't show up for the accountability. They literally spend this money and they disappear. And that's just a great example of the fact that creating that community is harder than it looks. I will tell you guys, I'm not seeing the chat box since I'm on full screen. So if you have any questions, please do just pop off the microphone and let me know. Or even if you're just like, want to give me a, yeah, girl, I feel ya, whatever, feel free to pop in. So basically, the way we talk to people matters. It matters when we invite people to work with us. It matters in our private groups where we're holding people accountable to fitness and nutrition. So unfortunately, when people come to Beachbody and in our business, most of us talk to others based on our instinct. We watch the way our upline coaches talk to their challengers, talk to their team, talk to their potential clients. We watch the way that other personal trainers in gyms talk to people. We talk to our clients and to our potential challengers the way we think that a personal trainer talks. And the fact of the matter is that learning how to talk to your clients based off of instinct or oral tradition is not really adequate. There is so many things that you could be doing to really bring your communication to the next level. And motivational interviewing is just one of my favorite tools for that. It really takes you past instinct and forces you to examine the way that you communicate as a professional, and it gives you some really concrete ways to move forward doing that. So I wanted to go over a couple of basics that have to do with psychology, just kind of simply and quickly to make sure we have some background information before we get to motivational interviewing. And I'm really not even going to talk about motivational interviewing until the end. I want to set the stage with you guys about a couple of other things first. So self-talk is a really, really important phrase to understand. It's this dialogue that we all have with ourselves in our head. It's what we say to ourselves. So when I was a little girl, I used to imagine that I was writing a book about myself, and I would like narrate my book in my head, where I'd say, oh, you know, Lauren walked across the room and she looked out the window, she saw the stormy sky and she was disappointed. So I had this whole like really developed dialogue in my head, and we all have something kind of similar, where either we're thinking thoughts, we're talking to ourselves, and whatever that is, that's our self-talk. So self-talk, this is just something I wanted to define. And then another thing I wanted to talk about was reflective listening. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because motivational interviewing is awesome, but it's kind of a, it's not a basic tool. So if you're somebody who's not a good listener already, motivational interviewing might not be the place for you to start. Reflective listening is a really easy and basic skill that most of us need to develop, not just in fitness and nutrition coaching, but really in our daily lives, when we talk to our spouses, when we talk to our friends, whatever it is. So the main idea with reflective listening is that we're being empathetic, and in the way that we are listening to others and communicating with them, we're showing them that we are paying attention to them, that we care about them, that we are empathetic to them. And this, believe it or not, doesn't come naturally to other people. So being a good listener is not something that's necessarily a skill that we're all born with. And that can be hard to accept, but the sooner that we can look at ourselves and step outside of ourselves and say, hey, you know what, this might be something that I need to improve on, the faster we're going to get better results with our clients, with our customers, and with our lives. So the way that I like to do reflective listening in fitness is maybe a little bit different than what people do in counseling, but this is how I do it. I usually like to start with validating that person's feelings. So let's say somebody has come to me and we're having this open-ended conversation about the fact that their husband just lost their job, and as they're in that position with very little money, this lady maybe has to cancel her gym membership, and she doesn't get to use a babysitter anymore, and so she's just got all this stress coming down on her, and with all that stress, she just doesn't feel like she can put herself first to work out and to eat healthy. So the first thing that I like to do is to validate that person's feelings. Make them feel like you understand them. Don't make them feel like they're a failure or like they should be disappointed with themselves for not being able to deal with whatever they're going through. So something really simple like, wow, that's a really hard position to be in. Something that just lets the person know that you identify with what they're going through and that you validate them, that you think they're doing the best that they can and that they're doing a good job. You validate their self-worth. You can also say something like, it sounds like you're doing the best you can with what you've been dealt. Anything that comes comfortable to you with your verbiage. But the next important part of reflective listening is to repeat back what they've said to you. So for example, you could say, so let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. And in this example, I'm summarizing a different example. Your husband isn't supportive of your attempts to eat healthier. He keeps buying junk food even when you ask him not to, and he makes fun of you for eating like a bird. This makes you feel picked on and angry, and ultimately you go back to eating the way he eats. Do I have that right? And either reflecting this back to the person gives them a chance to say, no, actually, this is really how I feel. Or it gives them the opportunity to say, yeah, you do have that right. I really know that you're listening to me right now, and I really know that you're on the same page, and I know that you care about me. Now, believe it or not, 90% of my coaches do not do this in their conversations. They don't practice reflective listening. And in our business, building relationships and building a connection with people and having customers know, like, and trust us is really, really, really important. And this is a very, very basic way that you can start to establish that. Okay, so now I want to move on. If any of you guys are curious about this readiness to change model, I just wanted to put the name of it up here. I don't want to cover it, but the Transtheoretical model of change is something that's really great to know if you're in coaching prior to understanding motivational interviewing. It basically just shows that people go through a cycle when they're trying to figure out whether they're actually going to do something or not. So you can read up in depth on this, but basically I just want you guys to understand that people do go through contemplation of change. They finally get to a point where they decide to make a decision, they actively change it, and then they maintain that habit. This is something we kind of all intuitively know as coaches, but it actually has a name, the Transtheoretical model of change. Okay, so this is where we really start to get into the meat of communicating with our clients as it relates to motivational interviewing. So let's say that you have a potential customer who you've reached out to, and you want to help them get healthier. Or maybe you're a personal trainer in the gym and you meet somebody outside of the gym at a restaurant or something, and they seem mildly interested in what you do, but for the most part, they're in a place that we call ambivalence. Ambivalence is this gray zone between making a choice. So let's say for a particular situation or a behavior, you could have two choices. You could choose to do something, or you could choose not to do something. Somebody who's ambivalent is really and truly right in the middle of those two choices. They're not leaning towards any particular thing. So you could either look at this one of two ways. This could be really frustrating for you because you're like, wow, they're not leaning towards eating healthy and they're not leaning towards exercising. This is really going to be hard for me. Or you could look at this like, oh, great. They're not leaning towards eating Twinkies for breakfast every day and being a couch potato for the rest of their life, so my work is cut out for me. It just kind of depends. But the great thing about ambivalence is that you're right in the middle of being able to help someone choose a choice that's constructive for their lives and for their health. So we could define ambivalence a little bit more. It involves simultaneously conflicting motivations. Think of the emotional turmoil of being torn between two levers, or of desperately wanting something that you also know is bound to have regrettable consequences. So ambivalence, like, even though I make it sound kind of clinical and black and white, it can actually be kind of painful for people. I mean, does that sound fun, being torn between two levers, or being torn between two choices that you know are both can have regrettable consequences? I mean, it's sometimes that sheer discomfort itself can cause somebody to make a change. Not always. It can also be that sticky place where somebody can remain for a long time. So keep ambivalence in the back of your head. Know that ambivalence is a state that your clients or customers might be in. But let's move forward to talking about how we can figure out what's going on with these people so we know how to communicate with them, so we know what tools to use. If you listen to people's words, you can make predictions about what state they are in. You can make predictions about what choices they're leaning towards, if they're really right in ambivalence or if they're leaning towards choice A or choice B. So basically, you can make predictions about what they will or will not do or what they're currently inclined to do. Now, this is kind of interesting because you have to understand the research process that psychologists use to figure this out. So basically, some psychology researchers were sitting down and they were listening to conversations and they were paying attention to how many times people in different situations were using different words. And they noticed that people who were using certain kinds of words were more likely to make changes than others were. And so over time, psychologists were able to actually categorize and sort of file away all of these words into different categories. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of an example in each of the different categories of words that help you to make predictions about what your clients are going through. So the first category of words or talk is called preparatory change talk. And this is basically where people are warming up to make a change. So when we talked about ambivalence and you guys looked at those arrows on either side of the ambivalence, this is somebody who's leaning a little bit more towards one side than they are smack dab in the middle. They're warming up to change. And usually with preparatory change talk, we divide these into different categories, and there's a little phrase called darn that helps you to remember it. And here's just some examples of warming up to change with change talk. So they express some sort of desire about it. I want to lose some weight. I'd like to get a better job. I wish I were more comfortable around people. I'd love to get better grades next year. So they're expressing that they're interested in it. They're not necessarily saying, I'm going to lose some weight. I'm applying for better jobs. I'm going to go out and join Meetup and make some friends. I'm going to go get a tutor to get better grades next year. We're not there yet, but we're warming up to it. Within the category of ability, it's important for people to believe that change is possible. So some phrases show us that people are starting to believe in their ability. If they're making I can statements, I am able to. On a lesser scale, if somebody's saying I could or I would be able to with that future tense, that also could show that they're starting to change the way that they feel about their own ability. So these are all signs, if you're hearing these phrases, that people are warming up to change. If people are finding reasons to change, this is another type of preparatory change talk. Well, I would probably have more energy if I stopped drinking so much soda. I might sleep better at night if I start exercising. My knees would feel better if I lose 50 pounds. So if you're hearing people say these types of things in a conversation, they're finding reasons to make that change, which is showing you that they're warming up to the change some more. Need, any statements about need are a great signal that somebody is moving forward because it demonstrates urgency. I need to, I have to, I must, I can't keep going on like this. Something has to change. Now, on the other hand, if I'm hearing a potential client say these things in a conversation, I also know that I can't really push them too hard too soon because they're not hot yet. They're just lukewarm. They're warming up to the change. And so I want to respect that boundary at first as we go through the conversation. Now, then we have a whole bunch of different words that show that somebody is getting even warmer. We're not just warming up now we're getting even warmer. And these have to do with the categories of commitment, activation, and taking steps. So when somebody uses commitment language that shows they're getting even warmer, I wrote nice and toasty here. They're saying, I will, I promise, I swear, I guarantee. They're using language that shows that they intend to make some sort of an action. With activation, it's getting really hot in here if you're hearing activation language. I'm willing to, I am ready to. These are such wonderful phrases to hear from clients who have been ambivalent before. Taking steps is the ultimate. When they say, I bought some running shoes so I can exercise. This week, I didn't snack in the evening. I went to a support group meeting this week. Boy, it is really getting warm in here. But this is not quite the same as actually making change yet. So someone, for example, if they attend an AA meeting for alcoholism, isn't necessarily making a commitment to quit drinking, but it's a step in that direction, and we are getting hot, hot, hot on the scale of making changes. So I just want to stop here right now and say, don't worry. You don't have to classify everything you read or hear. You do not have to print out this change talk and keep it at your desk. You don't have to be coding and counting the words that you're reading from your clients in your groups or your messages. It's just important to recognize it on a basic level. And I would go back and say that client conversations aren't always intuitive for my new coaches. Some people naturally pick up on these types of phrases in conversations and draw the correct conclusions about them, and some people don't. It's like some people have natural athletic ability and some people don't. So if you are a coach who kind of feels like this is a real weakness for you, then maybe you do want to pay a little bit more attention to the specifics and to learning them. But for most of us, it's just important to recognize it on a basic level. Now, we've been talking about change talk. I also want to talk to you about something called sustained talk. So sustained talk is the opposite of change talk. Sustained talk is showing you that a person really has absolutely no likelihood of changing what they're doing, or on the ambivalence scale, they're leaning towards the opposite behavior. Instead of change, they're leaning towards sustaining what they're already doing. So in the desire category, that might be, I just love smoking and how it makes me feel. I don't want to exercise. I'd like to eat whatever I want, whenever I want. As far as ability, I know I've heard clients say this recently. I've tried and I don't think I can lose weight. I've tried, I don't think I can quit smoking. I think my health will be just fine without exercising. I can manage without any help. These are all sustained talk that's showing you that you kind of have a lot of extra work to do, or that person has a lot of extra work to do if they're going to change their behavior. They'll start coming up with the reasons to keep doing what they were doing. Smoking helps me relax. If I try to lose weight, I just gain it back again. I know I had a client once who told me that, soda helped her with her asthma. And so that was the reason she kept drinking soda, never mind getting asthma medication or anything like that. I have to smoke. I can't get through the day without it. Commitment, I'm just not going to exercise, and that's final. So all of these things are showing you that a person is not moving towards change. They're moving towards sticking with what they're already doing. Taking steps, again, is that point that is really the firmest when we're talking about any sort of talk. When somebody actually goes and takes steps towards not changing their behavior, that's really not a good sign. I went back to smoking this week. I canceled my gym membership. Definitely a sign of sustaining behavior that they were already doing. So again, the most important thing is just to know the difference between change talk and sustained talk. Know that it exists. Don't memorize anything. But now, when we move on to talking about exactly what motivational interviewing is, we can put this to use in a way that's not difficult or overwhelming or too technical. So what exactly is motivational interviewing? It's really a method of conversation. And when it's used properly, it can actually increase the likelihood that a client or a patient will exit that ambivalent state and move toward changing a behavior, towards that positive path that you want them to be on. And again, this is rooted in behavioral psychology and in tons of research the behavioral psychologists have done. And it was actually pioneered for use in treating addiction, which I think is really interesting because to me, I think that for many cases, we deal with a lot of food addiction and a lot of emotional eating in our field. So it really makes sense that these techniques that work with more traditional, serious clinical addictions would also work for us too. So it's a tool that we use to have a conversation with someone to get them to say more change words. Sometimes we accidentally talk to people in a way that encourages sustain words. Instead, we have to focus on how we're talking so we can make people say things about changing that evoke change talk. And I want to use an example for you guys, and I'm actually going to exit my full screen here so that I'm going to try to anyways, so that I can see what you guys write in the chat box. I am going to tell you guys something, and I want you to write the first 3 things that come in your head when I tell it to you, and then press enter so everybody can see. I really hope that my screen is not freezing right here because it totally looks like that's what it's doing. Come on, don't do this to me, baby. Okay, good. All right, where'd you guys go so I can see you? Sorry, pardon my Zoom issues here. Where did you go? Can you guys still see me? Because I feel like I am, oh, I have to exit the screen share, don't I? Carl, can you give me any tips on how to exit the screen share so I can see you guys again? I am totally lost. I know you've done this before. Where did it go? Let's see. Hold on, guys. Amanda, can you still hear me? My technical difficulties here. Oh, let me try back to the meeting. That looks right. Back to meeting. How do I do that? What's going on? Meetings. Okay, that's fine. I get it, but just bring me back to my meeting. Are you guys still there? Can anybody talk to me?
Hey, Lauren, this is Larissa.
Hey, Larissa, can you help me figure out how to get off of screen share so I can see you guys again?
Yeah, it should be just like at the top of your screen, I think is, I'm on my phone right now.
Driving me nuts.
But it should be in the screen that you were originally sharing in is where you're probably going to.
Okay, well, before I take up too much of your guys' time, because it feels to me right now like I am failing at figuring this out, what I want you guys to do instead is I'm going to go back to this slide where I was, and I'm just, instead of having you guys write in the chat box, I want you just to come off of mute and let me know what your answers are. So just give me a second to find my screen, because now I'm all flustered, because this is awesome like that. Okay, so think of the first three things that pop into your head. And Larissa, thanks again for helping me with that. I appreciate it. Every single one of you on this Zoom call needs to drive a pickup truck. What are the first three things that come in your head? You can write it down, or you can read it out to me. Everyone in the Zoom call needs to drive a pickup truck. Does anybody want to share a thought that pops into their head? I'm going to figure this out. Anybody? I know what pops into my head, and I drive a pickup truck. So for most people, what happens when they hear you should drive a pickup truck is that they think of all the reasons that they shouldn't, right? So I shouldn't drive a pickup truck. It uses too much gas. It's $15,000 more expensive than the car that I already drive. I don't need a pickup truck. It's just me. I don't carry anything in the back bed of the truck. Another example of this, my husband told me once when I was pregnant that I should take up swimming. So what if I said to you guys, and now that I've explained the thought process to you, maybe you can notice it pop into your head a little bit more. What if I said to you guys, you should quit doing the cardio you're doing now and you should swim 3 days a week? Notice your thoughts. What's the first 3 or 4 thoughts that come into your head? It's all the reasons why you shouldn't do what I just told you to do. So essentially what's happening when you tell somebody what to do is you're accidentally getting them to think of all the reasons that they shouldn't actually do that. Wow, does that sound like maybe something that's not working towards the outcome that we're trying to get to? We're giving people the opportunity to talk themselves out of being healthy, to talk themselves out of eating right, to talk themselves out of all these things that we're trying to get them to do. So this statement is an example of something you'd want to avoid with your clients, and I'm going to give you a little bit more of a framework of how you can actually talk to them. But before we do, we have to get into, let me get back into presentation mode here. We have to get back into the heart of where motivational interviewing comes from. Like I said at the beginning, we're here to serve, right? We're here to serve others. And a lot of times we think that serving others means educating them. And by educating them, we need to tell them what the right thing to do is, because that's what teachers do, right? They stand in front of a classroom and they tell people what the right thing to do is. And as a teacher and as an educator, this is something that I am so guilty of, and it's so hard for me to change. We have this desire to fix someone based on what we know to be a good way of doing things, to set things right, to teach. But what this does is it doesn't create change talk. It doesn't create all those wonderful statements that we looked at earlier. It creates sustained talk, or it creates an opportunity for people to actually talk themselves out of what you want them to do in the first place. So when my husband said to me when I was pregnant, Lauren, you should take up swimming, I was actually ready to start going swimming that week. I thought of it on my own, and I was like, cool, I'm going to start swimming this week. And then he said that to me, and in my head, this is the stream of consciousness that happened. Well, I don't really know how to swim very well. I'm not going to get a very good workout. It's really cold in Virginia right now, and it's going to feel terrible to get in and out of the pool. I'm 7 months pregnant. Like, what am I going to wear in the pool? Just all these thoughts. And literally, I did not get in the pool that week. I had intended to. I had bought goggles and everything. It took me 2 more months to go to the swimming pool, because when he said that to me, it activated all of this resistance in my head that I didn't have before. And it was the weirdest thing. And I didn't know in that instance that what he was doing was actually more likely to talk me out of what I was doing instead of into it. So what we need to do is realize that this writing reflex comes from a place where we feel like we know better and we're going to educate people. It doesn't come from a respect for others or a belief in them. And I'm not saying that anybody who has the writing reflex is trying to be mean or malicious or anything like that, because I know that's not the case. And certainly, like, I have the biggest writing reflex on the planet. So I know that you can have a good heart and still make this mistake. You can have your heart in the right place. But I invite you to change your perspective and to believe that every human being is a thinking, feeling, deeply intuitive person who deep down, if given the opportunity, knows exactly what they need. And that can be really, really hard shift to make. And I think that I see the opposite of this a lot in my coaches who are frustrated with trying to get new customers. They're like, oh, so-and-so, she just doesn't want to commit. She's not ready. She makes excuses for not starting an exercise program. And like, I'm so frustrated that I didn't sell any challenge packs this month. It's just a reflection of all these people who don't have their act together. And it's easy to get in that place when you're frustrated with your business, instead of, again, believing that every human being is capable of this and they're deeply intuitive and they know what they need. So motivational interviewing is guiding the person to reflect on their lives, their behaviors, and their deep knowledge of themselves, instead of you reflecting on it for them. That's probably the most important point. I should have bolded it and underlined it and circled it. You're guiding the person to reflect on their lives instead of you reflecting on their life for them. You're respecting them. You're not judging them. In your head, you're not thinking, wow, this chick really needs help because she won't commit to what she needs. You're putting them in the position of the leader in their life, and you are empowering them. And let's be honest, guys, like, what we do in fitness is not really about losing weight. It's about giving people a better quality of life, about helping them tap into who they really are and living to their fullest potential. And what better way to do that than to empower them literally from the moment that we start speaking to them. When it's our very first connection, before they're a customer, before they're a client, before they press play on their video, we empower them just with their first conversation. So how do you have a conversation differently? Let's say that you're on your Facebook Messenger chat and you're talking to Jenny. And Jenny is a 35-year-old mother of 3. She needs to lose 50 pounds. You start talking to her, you spark an open-ended conversation, and when she opens up about her need to lose weight, you could do this. You could say, girl, that's an easy fix. All you need to do is eat healthy, cut out junk food, and exercise. It's the old-fashioned way, but it works. So based on what we talked about in our previous examples, what do you guys think she's thinking when you say that? What have you created by telling her what to do? Anybody want to chime in for me? I'm pretty sure that we've probably created some resistance here. She's thinking, oh, girl, that's an easy fix. Well, maybe it's easy for you, but it's not easy for me. You obviously don't know what I'm going through. All you need to do is eat healthy, cut out junk food, and exercise. Well, it's not as simple as that. And I've tried cutting out junk food before, and it hasn't worked for me. And I don't like to exercise, and I want an easier way to do it. And so we haven't set her on a path towards change. We've set her on a path to talking her out of eating healthy, cutting out junk food, and doing exercise. So what you could do instead is you can do that validation. You can do that reflective listening. Wow, it's really great that you have a goal that you're working toward. It sounds like it's really important to you. What do you think your first step should be? Again, put her in the position of being the leader. Respect her intuitive knowledge. Allow her to lead her life. Empower her to come up with the solution herself. What do you think your first step should be, Jenny? Now, the thing is, Jenny lives in a world where, she can read the front of magazine covers when she's at the checkout line at the grocery store. She's seen some